You're listening to the BIG Sci Fi Podcast, the biggest sci fi podcast in the galaxy, with Adina, Brian, Chris, and Steve. We're a part of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, and we're having more fun than ever celebrating our 10th season and 4 years of friendship talking all things science fiction. Calling all sci-fi fans, you're invited to the party. Let's have some fun.
Science fiction often asks a deceptively simple question. What if? But today's guest doesn't just ask it, he builds entire worlds around it and then lets readers live inside the consequences. Our guest today is Hugh Howey, the best-selling author behind Wool, Shift, Dust, and the Larger Silo Universe. Stories that began as a short self-published experiment and grew into a global phenomenon, including a major television adaptation. Hugh's work sits at a fascinating intersection of classic science fiction themes, human resilience, systems of control, and unintended consequences, while also representing a modern shift in how stories can find their audience. Now, before we jump in, let me introduce the rest of the crew for this episode. Today, I have my co-hosts, Brian, Chris, Steve, and of course, me, Adina. And with that, let's welcome Hugh Howey to the Big Sci Fi Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thank you
Pleasure
for
having
being
you, sir.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to really jump right into it today. And we're going to start at the beginning of, because you lately, at least in the science fiction circles, when we're talking about books and publishing, you're often cited as one of the defining voices in modern sci-fi publishing. So what did or didn't you expect when Wool first found its readers? And I was definitely one of them many years ago.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to find very many readers. It was a passion project. It was a short story. I was writing novels at the time and working on a sequel to a trilogy that I had written. And I had this idea that felt like it needed to be a bigger book, but I didn't have the time for it. And I had just written a novella for a class project. I was working in a college bookstore at the time and taking classes just for the fun of it because they gave us one free class a semester, so I took advantage of that. And for my final project, I wrote a novella called The Plagiarist, and I really fell in love with that length of story. It was longer than a short story. It didn't require the commitment of a novel, but everything had to be really tight and in place. And it was like a puzzle box trying to solve that 12,000 to 15,000 word length. So this idea behind Wool was bugging me for years, and I was like, I've got to kind of exercise this demon, get it down, and I shortened the idea and turned it into this novella, and just publish it. Made a little paperback that's like 50 pages long. I was selling through CreateSpace for like $5, and sold the story for 99 cents, which was the cheapest Amazon would allow me. I probably would have sold for 35 cents if they had that as an option. And I hit those buttons and went back to writing my next novel. And within a few weeks, I was selling more copies of this story than anything, the 7 other things that I'd published before that. Within a month, I was making more from that short story than I was at my day job selling books.
Wow.
And things just snowballed from there, and it really changed my life.
So had you, at that point, thought of the parts that came after Wool, or when did the rest of it start coming together?
So there was no more after that short story. Anyway, it's a very small spoiler because it only take you 30 minutes to read that first short story, maybe an hour to read that first short story. And at the end of it, there's no way to carry that story forward. The characters are all resolved, let's say. And so when the sales took off, I was just happy to have, I thought maybe people find other stuff I write, and I was happy to have it as its own little success. But I but at the time I read like every email that came my way because it wasn't that many. I read every Facebook message because it wasn't that many. I read every single Amazon review because as any author will tell you, like you're lucky if you get one review for every 1,000 reads, or it might be even worse than that ratio. So I knew I could glance at my dashboard and I could see these numbers like 8, 4, 12, 16. Those were how many reviews were on each of the books that I had published. And if I open it up and that 16 became a 17, I was like, so someone's thoughts about something I wrote. So you would click on it and I every self-published author that I know has gone through this phase of their publishing. And the most dangerous part, yeah, Tina's raising her hand. The most dangerous part of this phase of your publishing career is that you will start responding to people. And I somehow I was like, I could diffuse anything in an Amazon review. Like I ended up meeting people in Amazon reviews and dedicating books to them later because
Wow.
they told me how this story helped them through this hospital thing. Like you wouldn't believe the emotional things, but often what happens is like someone criticizes something and you think you're going to go change their mind. You're not. Like, don't go in there. So, but the thing that I kept seeing in every one of these reviews that was the only negative about Wool originally, they were all 5-star reviews in the beginning. Now, there's enough people that everyone will hate something. But the only negative thing was that people were complaining it was too short and they wanted more.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
yeah, I'd never heard that before. Like I was used to like handing a friend a book and they look how thick. They'd be like, "That's a lot, man. I'm your best friend, but I'm not going to read that." And so for the first time, like people were like, "Wait, people want more." And so I had to think like, okay, where's this story going to go from here? And that it wasn't until it was already pretty much a little viral success that I started outlining what became the rest of the novel.
Wow.
Well, that's so interesting. What and really encouraging, I'm sure, for any aspiring writers and authors listening. Of that. So I always love asking you the origin story when we talk to people like you. What got you into writing? What inspired you? When did you know you wanted to write? And just kind of what is your origin story?
Yeah, so I was an avid reader from a very young age. I remember my mom was a school teacher and taught me to read before I even went off to school, which is became a problem because I was bored in school. Like I wasn't smarter
Yeah.
than anyone. I was just like you shouldn't be half a year ahead of your peers. It's a terrible thing for a parent to do to a kid. I've forgiven my mom for it, but like I was bored at every phase, but I didn't get ahead. Like we all graduated with the same knowledge. But I remember we had Dr. Seuss books would show up in the mail in little cardboard boxes. Like it was just the same size as the book, and peeling that open and reading a new Dr. Seuss book was one of the earliest memories that I have. I got sucked into fantasy because I was a really young nerd playing D&D, like way too young, like age 9, 10. I was playing pen and paper Dungeons and Dragons, and I felt like I ran out of fantasy books to read. I'd read every Forgotten Realms book, every all the twins and the Tristan books and all this stuff, and anything that had a dragon on the cover. And I was in that section of the bookstore, 11 or 12 years old, when someone handed me a book they said I should read next, and it was Ender's Game. And I was like, I'm not into sci-fi. And boy, was I wrong. That became my favorite book of all time
Okay.
for most of my life. It might still be. I don't know what I would put above it for the impact. And I read that book and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy back to back. And those books, like, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to create worlds like this. But the thing about Ender's Game was that the author, you get to the back of the book and you realize the author was from North Carolina, which is where I grew up. And I didn't realize
Okay.
I grew up on a farm, in the countryside. And I was like, I never realized that this was a career path. And from age 12, I dreamed of being a writer, not being a full-time, like making money at it writer, just dreamed of creating worlds.
The interesting thing about Silo was I didn't know about it until I decided, because I had Apple, to watch the first episode. And as soon as I watched the first episode, I watched the second one. And then I went, wait a minute, I got to go get my wife Elaine. She has to watch this as well. So we went back and I rewatched the first two episodes, and we just went right through both seasons. And it was all done. I said, I got to go buy a book. So I bought the 3-book collection. And then I told my daughter, Stephanie, who doesn't read, and I said, you got to watch this series. You've got to watch Silo. And as soon as she watched it, she was hooked. So she went out and bought the 3-book collection. And she said, I've never read 1,500 pages in my entire life so quickly. Because
Cool.
it is such a compelling story. It just, you have such a great way of covering so much material. And, one of the things that's most interesting about Silo is how you, as Adina says, how you world build it so well. It seems so real. It seems like this could actually happen. And you covered all the details that anyone would ask as to how do people survive this long underground.
Thank you for that. I just got I get these emails way more often than I ever dreamed when I started off writing, and just got one last week from someone who says like they never got into reading, and it was the show that led them to the book, and they tore through them. And so my response first is just like, this is the best compliment ever to get anyone into reading. But also, if you like that, and I always give like my 5 recommendations, because from there you shouldn't just get like so absorbed in this world. I remember I was a bookseller when kids were bragging about reading Harry Potter each book for the 8th time, and I was like, amazing. Try some other books too. There's there are other great there's so many great stories out there. But that's really heartwarming. For me, the world building is I think stories can be boring if it's just ideas. It has to be about people. Like you have to have these relationships, and you have to learn about the world organically through the people living in them. You can't just like fantasy gets away with this a little bit, but you can't just info dump and say, hey, here's the cool stuff in this thing I built. Most sci-fi writers, myself included, are probably on the spectrum, and so we want to tell stories about things, but if you tell it through the lens of people, you'll always tell a better story.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think the secret is like read really, really good literature, not just good genre literature, but read across a broad spectrum. Read thrillers and mystery. John D. MacDonald is a big influence of mine. David Mitchell, who writes like these crazy literary stories, but they're always dropping details about the sounds and the smells and the the things happening around the corner that make it feel real. And that's something I think I've picked up from writers that I admire.
And you did it very well. Yes.
What do you feel is the hard part for you when it comes to writing and crafting a story?
What's the hard part? Every time I start with a blank sheet of paper, I'm like, how do I do this again? Because the last thing that I did was I was doing a final polish on a nearly finished book. Writing, as several of you know, is many different exercises, one after the other. And so writing a rough draft is so different from doing a revision and doing some edits and doing some polishing and all of that. So the last thing you did is so different from the next thing you need to do. And I think the hardest part for me as a writer is like learning to mode shift and like, okay, stop dreaming up new scenes. You've got the rough draft. It's good. Now it's time to find the weaknesses and revise them up, like switch into revision phase, and then realize, okay, you're not going to make this any better if you keep working on it. Now it's time to polish and edit. And so I guess switching hats is probably like the hardest thing I have, knowing when to switch those hats too.
So does that imply that are you only typically working on one project at a time?
God, I wish. No, I'm often actually, this is an advantage and something that I try to tell aspiring writers is that by the time you sit down to write a book, it's a lot easier if you've already, daydreamed that story beginning to end several times. So most things that I write, I have been cooking in the oven for like a long time while I'm working on other projects, and then I'm making notes. I've got a document with like ideas, even snippets of conversation, maybe a scene, an entire chapter, and then by the time I'm polishing something, I've already started something else. And then maybe that's the problem of mode shifting. I'm trying to prevent myself from having to do that by trying to stay limber in every mode all the time. Helps me.
Is there anything that you find throughout the process? You mentioned mode shifting, and that can be challenging. Was there anything that ever like wakes you up in the middle of the night where you're like, okay, this is really bothering me. I don't know how to fix this challenge that I'm having with whatever I'm writing?
Not really. The thing that wakes me up in the middle of the night is usually a good idea. Like there's so many times where, and my wife knows this, like the laptop cracks open and she gets so happy for me. She's like, oh, like that's going to fuel the next writing session. So she gets giddy about it, when it happens, which is awesome to have that support. And sometimes I'll leave the bedroom and go and sit down and write a chapter, a scene in the middle of the night. I like when the plot has problems to solve because there's nothing better than coming up with a satisfying but realistic and not Deus Ex Machina and no plot holes. Like having everything click. It's like that last turn of the Rubik's Cube and every side is perfect. Like it only happens like once or twice with each writing project. And every time it feels like you just like solved a Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle.
Do you have a strategy for that? Just because I'm always amazed at like how when there are satisfying endings and resolution, I'm always blown away. Well, how did they think of that? How do they not just take the cheap, oh, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to solve everything? How do you make that? Or I guess what is your process for finding those resolutions for you?
For me, it's it's used to be long walks with my dog, and now it's like sitting at the helm of a sailboat looking at the horizon. Distraction-free thinking, which is a miracle, and I think people are getting way too little time with that now. Like if they have any quiet time, they put on music, they put on a podcast. We're just always consuming, and your brain really needs like problem solving time. Just laying in bed, with my eyes closed. I think a lot of people are anxious about like, I need to fall asleep quickly to get my 8 hours. And I lay in bed. I'm like, please don't fall asleep before I work through this. Like I actually want as much time laying there with my thoughts as possible. I'll drive and not put on music and just like, and when you have that time and you're constantly thinking about a problem, you'll run through 100 possible scenarios and seize on the one that satisfies you the most.
That's pretty cool. I find, the distraction-free thinking is really hard now, especially with things like TikTok, and it's just there's so much stuff always happening. And you're right, it is really important. I find sometimes at night it can be helpful to try and think through a problem. The challenge I have is sometimes my wife can tell if I'm thinking, and it's like, okay, she's very aware of I'm not sleeping, what's bothering me. But I think finding that distraction-free time is critical, especially now.
We have some choice, and we do have some individual choice in the matter to, turn off and put down the phone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
After you're done listening to this podcast, finish listening to this podcast.
Yeah, that's important. Let me ask you this question, Hugh. when Silo became a series, and the two seasons are based on the first book, how much creative control did you have over it? And there are remarkably differences between the series and things that happen in that versus what happens in the book. How did you feel about that? I mean, did they submit scripts to you and say, what do you think? Is this okay with you? Or did they just come across the individual writers of all the episodes, come up with their own ideas based on your novel?
Yeah, good questions. I was very involved in the creation of the show. I was really lucky that the people who wanted to make this were fans of the books. It's not like they were told like, here, go make this thing that you're just learning about now. Graham Yost was trying to make this 10 years earlier when I sold the rights to Fox and Ridley Scott and Steve Zalian. Graham was kind of lost out to those guys. And so when the rights came back and the guys who had pursued it at Sony were now at Apple and I'd done this deal with AMC, and Apple and AMC were in talks, Graham was the missing piece. Like Graham was like, wait, this is still this is up again. And bringing him in as such a huge fan of the project, really, I think, is what made the show what it is. He doesn't get nearly enough credit. And he's like the coolest guy ever. He doesn't even care if he gets credit. Like he has no ego, which is a rare thing to find in Hollywood. So when I was brought in as an executive producer, I was in the writer's room as we're outlining the pilot and the seasons and trying to figure out what all the beats were going to be. How do you fill 10 episodes and what do you change? And the dynamic was kind of the opposite of what you might expect. Like I was in there saying like, guys, when I wrote this, I did not expect we were going to be spending this much money filming like this many hours. We can change anything. Like, let's make it the best show it can possibly be. And for a new medium. And Graham was like, no, let's stick to the book. And so every time we would have any kind of like, could we do this and could we do that? I was always trying to push everyone to be creative and solve problems and bring their own juices to the show. And Graham was always trying to rein me in and pulling it back. And I think it's a better show for that, because if you do a 1-to-1 recreation, like you're not surprising anyone. Just read the book again if you just want to see the same events in the same order. And what I really like is getting hearing from people who read the books first and then watch the show, or vice versa. And they're like, wow, I like both for different reasons. And I thought I knew what this is going to be in it. And it surprised me. Season 3 and 4 are going to really like readers have no idea how much we're getting ready to mess with their minds. And it's deliberate. Like I'm having so much fun saying, well, they're going to expect this. So let's do that.
Is season 3 going to be based on Shift, and season 4 based on Dust?
What we did was season 3 and 4 cover Shift and Dust over 2 seasons.
Okay.
And so I think we've already kind of shown that with the very end of season 2 that we're going to be doing some time hopping.
Yeah.
And anybody who's read Shift can see like how much fun that's going to be for people who are just watching it when these events that seem disconnected start to collide. It's going to be like such a really fun thing to see on the screen. And now we're in 2026, and I can say with confidence that you're going to see that season this year.
And then the other thing, where again in the story, like in the TV series, the situation with the generator is so compelling and exciting, and in the book it's like it just happens. And then in the series, Bernard is this big, tough, strong guy, but in the book he's this nebbish little fellow, and those are, I like both of them. I like, it's like, you don't have to pick one or the other. Like you said, you can enjoy both and really see how you developed it.
Yeah. And so you learn a lot when you make an adaptation like this. And one of the things that that I've really learned to appreciate is just the magic of casting. Like it's not like you can make a list of all the people you want. They have to have a block of time available. You have to be able to
Yeah.
get them. You have to be able to afford them. You have to find people who are interested in moving from cinema to doing a TV show, or you know, there's so many variables. And then there's a lot of relationships. People at people who've worked with people who can say, "Hey, I can, I can call Tim Robbins directly, and he might be interested. In this is his kind of show." And people are like, "Wait, we could get Tim to play Bernard." Any short Nebish idea is out the window. Like,
Yeah,
if you can get Tim,
exactly.
if you get Tim Robbins to play your bad guy, you get Tim Robbins.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that's how a lot of things happen. Like, there's creative decisions, but then there's also just like smart casting, and then okay, now what? And that's the way some of those things happen.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so you were involved in the writing and creation of the scripts, but now as an executive producer, did you have input into the casting, or were you there, along for that ride?
Well, my input was they would say, "What do you think about this?" And I would always say, like, "That's brilliant. Can we get them?" Like,
Yeah.
we were lucky that we had, I mean, Apple when we were making this show, Apple didn't even have this reputation yet. Like, we were one of the first big sci-fi shows in production at Apple. Now, like, they're the home for
Mhm.
the best sci-fi on TV.
Yeah. Oh
Like
gosh, yes.
Foundation,
Yes.
Severance,
Yes.
Pluribus,
Yes.
For All
For all
Mankind.
mankind. Yeah.
Like, it's insane. They are for sci-fi spectacle what HBO was for, like high-end drama.
Yeah.
And so I can look back with hindsight and say, like, Apple is uniquely suited to make the best sci-fi on TV. But at the time, I had no idea that that's the powerhouse that they were shaping up to be. I just knew everybody that they brought in was the best of the best. They were able to attract the best, in every department. Like, when I was on set, I was like, what'd you work on recently? And they were like, "Oh, I just did I was a creative director for the Star Wars prequels," or "I did all the costuming on the Lord of the Rings movies," or, Game of Thrones. Everybody was coming from like something spectacular. And that was what Apple brought. And so you don't give notes when you have that kind of talent coming in.
Absolutely.
I gave story notes, and I see a lot of those changes in the show, and I only push back on a few things, and I think each of those made the show a little bit better.
It's really cool to see your passion and energy around the show, because it's neat to see that you appear to be very satisfied with what's happening, and obviously it's hopefully good for sales of the books and other books you write too. But has there been anything surprising that you've experienced or seen in your experience with it becoming a show?
Yeah, I had no idea it was going to be. You hear that the best marketing for books is like get something adapted, but it's been shocking the longevity of these books, and I think the show has just had a huge impact on that. It was already like Wool was sitting on bookstore shelves 8-10 years after I wrote it, and I was a bookseller for a long time, so that's really rare. Like, usually books sit for 6 months and then they get taken off for the next thing. So I was already really lucky with that, but having the show just gave me a whole new audience. I mean, even a couple of you started with the show and then found the books.
That's right.
Also, it's funny, like, people think if you're successful as a writer that you somehow have a huge fan base. You don't. Like, it's super rare to sell millions of books. It's incredibly, incredibly rare. And when you do, almost no one has read your book still. Because not that many people. So For most of my career, people, finally come around to in a conversation with someone, what you do. I'm a writer. Oh, have I read anything that you've written? Like almost guaranteed you have not. Now, would I have heard of anything you've written? I can guarantee you have not. So you're broke. Like, no, I'm actually doing really well, but it's just the law of numbers.
That's
But after the
actually
TV
a
show
horrible
came
thing to
out,
say.
yeah, but it's just how it is. Like, there's so many people doing other things than reading, sadly.
Yeah.
But the
Well, and
TV show comes out, and now people are like, "Well, have you have I heard of anything you've read?" And usually it's my wife. She'll be like, "Have you heard of the show Silo?" And even if you haven't seen it, like you've heard of it, and that just has changed like people's perception of whether or not I'm any good at what I do. And it's all unfair. None of it's valid, but that's the reality. The people assume I'm a better writer because they've heard of the show that got adapted.
So interesting.
I'm very curious. You're sort of touching on, people's negative comments like, "Oh, you must be broke then." How do you deal with, especially when you were early in your career, dealing with the negative reviews or the person that's like, "Oh, this book is terrible. How dare they write this?"
Okay. I think there was a time where some negative comments bother me. Mostly it was from other writers who were like really critical of how I was publishing, and even me encouraging other people to self-publish. There's this idea that I was tainting the sanctity of how good every single book published was by suggesting someone publish their own work. Um, as a bookseller, something that I realized really early on was that there were not enough books for the people who were out there reading. Like people would come in and have a very narrow view of what they liked in a book. And once I realized one book they liked, I could name 10 other books and they'd already read them all. And then I was out. I was done. Like I couldn't recommend this book over here, by F. Scott Fitzgerald, when what they wanted was like, another Harry Potter. Like it was just what I really needed was more people publishing more books like Harry Potter and like F. Scott Fitzgerald. Um, and that was my problem as a reader. I just needed more books to choose from. So, one of the things that I really was confused by early on was I spent a lot of my career, my popularity trying to get more people publishing more books. Like if you're writing fiction now, write your own story, get it out there. If you're writing for yourself and put it in a drawer because you're ashamed of it, give it a shot. Give it to people to read. And that got some blowback. But eventually I got some advice from a friend who let me know that when people are critical of you, they're talking about something going on with themselves and they don't know anything about you. And so have compassion for them rather than defend yourself. And now when I see people get critical, I'm like, I wonder what's going on in their life that they are that this is how they want to spend their energy. And honestly, like most of the time I read a bad review, if I could reach through the screen and give that person a hug, I would.
Right. Oh, it's
I
so
like
good.
that. I
That's
like
so
that.
good.
Yeah. And, when you talk about, self-publishing, someone saying that's diluting, well, we have a self-publisher right over here who has written a number of books and done it that way. And then we had this kid on our show called Andy Weir, who also self-published his book, The Martian, digitally. And look where that has taken him in this point. So I think it's I don't know why you think why someone would say to you or whatever that it's diminishing publishing when it's opening up a world to other writers. I mean, people just want to get their creativity expressed, and if that's one way of doing it, then the whole world is a little luckier to have those writers out there doing that.
Yeah, I agree, and it's so cool that you bring Andy up because he's such a legend and such a great guy. I think writers tend to, in general, are very helpful to each other, but there are a number of writers who, and it seems to be more the writers who've had a little bit of success than the writers who've had no success, who are very like any other book is a competition for me to get where I want to go. And I've seen some like I would never name names, but like people I really looked up to, who I thought were had a great career and were good writers. And you get friendly with them enough to hear kind of their private thoughts, and they see other books as like a threat or something. And self-publishing exposed some of those people. Now they're no longer, you didn't have to know them. You just have to read their blogs to see how much they hated books being in the world. And I lost a lot of respect for some of my like literary heroes during those years, because I realized that these weren't fans of readers, they weren't fans of writers. They were just like consumed in their own journey, and not a fun place to end up.
Yeah.
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 Are you currently watching any other science fiction shows, sci-fi series on TV? I'm hooked on Fallout, and see that there's some similarities between Fallout and Silo in a post-apocalyptic world and people living in vaults or silos. And it just seems to be that there is, like you said, there is a rush of really good science fiction coming out on TV now that we're lucky. I don't know if anyone's watched Monarch on Apple, but Monarch is remarkable. I mean, it's improved the Godzilla genre greatly. So we're kind of lucky right now to see all this new science fiction on. For yourself, what do you find interesting?
Fallout's the show. I'm also like, when's the next episode dropping? That's one of my addictions right now. I'm a huge fan of the video games.
Oh, very
I
cool.
I
Nice, me too. I
got
enjoy
to
those.
like spend some time with Chris, one of the original writers on the first game, back at a Comic-Con, and we realized we had a lot of the same experiences, because we're sitting there like, man, we both like were like writing very similar ideas, and turns out we were both children of the Cold War, and we were obsessed with the idea of like having to live in a bunker because the world was going to get bombed. and
Yeah.
and you this is something in evolution. There's this thing called convergent evolution, where um unrelated organisms arrive at the same solution, like flight, or a site like has evolved in dozens of different ways, but they're all in a similar environment solving for the same problem, and so they come up with something similar. So they're not copying each other, they're adapting to their environment the same way. And when you see a lot of the same stories kind of froth up, it seems like everyone is like, what's the hot thing? And the reality is, like, a lot of these creators aren't even aware of what's happening, but they went through 9/11, as impressionable kids, or they all watched the space shuttle blow up, where they were alive when JFK was assassinated. And 20 years later, there's a lot of art, or even a year later, it could be pretty immediate. Like 9/11 is in everything that I write. It's impossible. I didn't even mean for it to be there, but it's just like I was at ground zero when it happened, and it was one of the most traumatic days of my life. And so when I need to draw on trauma to write a tense scene or character, like there I am drawing from that again, or I'm drawing from um, my relationship with my father that shows up in almost every story. And it takes time and perspective for us to realize why these stories are similar and why there's themes within our own stories.
Yeah, yeah. You were in New York during 9/11. You were there
Yeah,
in the city?
I was living on a
Oh
boat
my.
in North Cove Marina, which is at the like I used to wash the boat during the time of day that the shadow of the North Tower would fall over the boat so that I would be in the shade. And my best friend from Charleston just happened to be up visiting that weekend, staying on the boat with me. And I thought I lost him all day because he went to see what was going on. And I spent the whole day taking strangers from Manhattan to New Jersey to get off the island, and then going
Wow.
back to
Wow.
look for him. And debris, like I felt the fireball on my face, like the debris
Oh
was
my
raining down on
gosh.
us. But it I used to not be able to even talk about it, but I
Yeah.
finally wrote a story that was very biographical called Peace and Amber. Hardest thing I ever wrote, just like laying in bed, writing, just bawling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And took me longer to write that short story than most novels. And then afterwards, somehow I was able to like have a conversation about, I didn't even know what PTSD was. I was in my
Mhm.
20s when all that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought
Mhm.
PTSD was something only happened to soldiers. And now I
Yeah.
realize it happens to people in
Mhm.
abusive relationships,
Mhm.
happens to children with abusive parents. It happens to all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Happened to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. So bringing back, I guess, I'm going to say a little happier things. And I think you and I are Hugh, I think we're the same age. I think we might be exactly the same age within a year or so. So I was the same age when all those things happened, when the shuttle blew up, all the stuff. But getting back to a little bit more of the publishing and self-publishing. So if you look back, what do you think were some key decisions that you made that were spot on, the right decisions? Are they, as the landscape even of self-publishing has changed since you started? Because again, Create Space has evolved, and now there are other companies that are players. And as self-publishing people, we can use services like Ingram Spark, and there's all things. What key decisions were the right ones, or what decisions do you think still hold up today for people who are looking to self-publish?
Okay, that's a great question. The landscape has changed enough that someone that we've never heard of has a better grasp on what's happening than all the established players. Like it's because they're not held back by their biases. The advantage that I had was I was breaking into publishing when the landscape was so changing so fast and so new that I was at that right period where I had no biases. And everyone was saying like, no one reads ebooks. When I was like, well, why not? And people were saying print on demand will poison your career. And I was like, why would that be? Like I was just dumb enough to seize on the logical choices that if you didn't know anything about publishing, you would you would have made the right decisions in that moment. If you knew anything about
Mm.
publishing, you'd make the wrong decisions. And I think that's so often true that my advice to a lot of writers now is like, what does your gut tell you? And tell me, because I want to learn from you, and maybe we can hash through and see why what you're thinking is a really good idea. Because Andy, like, published his story on his blog for free, and people would have said, you can't give it away. How would you ever make money?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he got an audience, and that's how you make money. Like,
Mhm.
um, so being original and being true to yourself. The biggest piece of advice that always works and will work in any era is to keep writing. Like, don't write a book and then spend all your time marketing that book. Write the next book. Don't get trapped writing in a series because then you're always selling the first thing you wrote, which is not going to be your best thing. So we get addicted to our worlds and our characters, and we're like, we get sequelitis as writers. Go
Mhm.
write something completely different. You don't even know what your voice would sound like. Go write a horror novel. Go write a romance novel. Go try everything, and you might find. And that's why you should be reading everything too as a writer.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that advice holds up. Um, I remember the day that I got the contract for my first book was published with a small press. People were telling me you should just publish it yourself, but I had enough of that old world influence. People were saying you should get a publisher and self-publishing is bad and all this stuff. So I queried just for the fun of it. And as a learning process, I got two positive responses. One was an offer. It was with a very small press, but they were going to pay for everything. Like it wasn't one of those things where all the money was going to me and
Yeah.
they covered all the cost of production. And I was like, I'll never get a better offer. I'm going
Mhm.
to do this. And it was before the book even came out, they were getting enough pre-orders from my own efforts that they sent me an offer for the sequel. And when I got that offer, I realized from what they had done publishing that book, I was like, I not only could I do it all, I ended up doing a lot of it. Like they used my cover art because I did a better job than their artist. They let me paginate it. because I got obsessed with like kerning and widows and orphans and having every page look the way I wanted it instead of just like flowing it through a document and having, just a lone sentence here and a lone sentence here. I was like, I can change the spacing till it's perfect. So they used my pagination. And I was like, wait, I'm doing all the work. And I got this contract and I said, okay, my response instead of accepting was, can I buy the rights back to that first book? And that was the moment that my career trajectory really became laser focused. I'm going to do this myself. And the response I got back from my editor at the publisher was that this is the biggest mistake you'll ever make. And it wasn't mean. They weren't angry. We were good friends. We remained good friends, but they were like, "You're trashing your, you have a lot of potential, and you're trashing it with this decision." And that was their old world. She was in her 60s at the time, and that just meant that she had 40 years of bias.
Sure, yeah.
And
Traditional.
yeah. And that was the day that my life changed. I didn't realize it at the time, but I felt it. Like my girlfriend at the time, we went to dinner, to like a really fancy dinner, and celebrated me not signing that publishing contract. And we had just like 6 months earlier gone to dinner to celebrate signing the first contract. But I felt different at dinner that time. I felt so free and liberated. The other time when I signed the book contract, I felt sick to my stomach. I was giving away my baby and the control and the ownership of it. And I hated that feeling.
Yes, that is exactly it. I had not quite a similar experience, but when the whole print on demand and create space first came into the universe, I had written something of a memoir. I had owned a retail store, and I wound up writing somewhat of a memoir related to the retail store and published it that way. Several years later, a small press wanted to republish it. And so I said, sure, because I didn't really care. I didn't think I cared. And then in that process, they wanted to change the cover. They wanted to change the name of the book. And based on the contract I had signed with them, I had given up control over that. And so we argued, especially about the name of the book, and I lost. And I never wanted to go through that again. So when I started getting ready to publish, and all throughout this, I was always writing science fiction stories and always wanted to do a novel. So when I eventually, got to my novels, I was like, this novel can fail, but I want it to fail based on my decisions and not some other decision of someone else's that I might not agree with. So I never even considered traditional publishing for it. I was always self-publishing all the way because I want it to be my decision. I want it to be my decision.
Yeah. And if as a creative, like that's the reason you do it. Like you want to put the piece of art out there that you believe in.
Yeah.
And I think, and so that was like the thing that always felt very logical to me was that self-publishing was being an artist and in the purest sense, because you got to put out the work that you believed in. Whereas going with a traditional publisher was like being kind of like, I'm treating this as a career and a job, and I want to make money, and I'm willing to give up creative control to try to make sound financial decisions. And so that always felt like selling out in a way. And yeah, there's a purity to me to self-publishing. Here's the thing that I never understood. And I use this analogy a lot when I was writing about self-publishing at the time, is we love indie art in every other genre. Like we love indie films and we love indie musicians and we love, and what we hate is like a boy band where they auditioned the guys and they put, they assembled it and someone else wrote the music and someone else produced the videos. And like we hate that. We hate overproduced stuff. Traditional publishing, and I've been a fan of it my whole life. I've read most books I've read, but traditionally published. I've worked in bookstores. I'm with traditional publishers now. It's overproduced, and it's like, give me the grunge, give me the raw, and I've done, I've edited anthologies that we've self-published where I get to like see people's rough draft. And you like, I don't know, you feel like you're close to the source of it all when you're playing with that, with someone else's like uncut stone. So why did we learn to celebrate all these other indie arts? But when it comes to writing, it's like, no, you need a team of people to like market research this thing to death. So it was just logical to me. Like I got into it for the craft of it, and self-publishing always rewarded that.
I agree. Yeah. So similar, not exactly the same experience, but similar in some ways. And I definitely agree. Now, that said, I don't do my own cover art. I don't feel confident in doing that, but I do my own interior layouts. It's whichever pieces of the process, you are comfortable with. And then I outsource the parts that I'm not comfortable with, but I retain the control. So if my cover artist comes back and I don't like what they did, I'm the one who gets to make the decision of what eventually, gets out there into the universe, not someone else. My decision.
Yeah.
Mine. I like that. Well, so let me ask this question that I had written down. I think this is one of my favorite. Is there since, especially I think since Silo has hit the screen, I think you've had even a lot more interviews than before. So is there a particular question that you wish us interviewers might stop asking you? And what's a question you wish we would ask you that we wouldn't know to ask?
I don't mind answering the same question over and over again, because if someone's asking it, they haven't heard my answer to it. The questions that I'm into, I love the philosophy of writing, and especially sci-fi and the genres. Like I love when interviews like get into what's the difference between sci-fi and fantasy, and why are they shelved in the same place, and why is all the really good sci-fi, the best stuff, why do we take it out of the sci-fi section and stick it in the literature section? And what does that say about just the way we try to make a ghetto out of the sci-fi fantasy section? Like these things fascinate me, because we love sci-fi and fantasy. If you look at culture, we love it. But in the publishing world, it's treated like a pariah, which is so weird. Like sci-fi and fantasy makes all the money. Like it's what people want. Like the Avatar films, the Marvel franchises, Star Wars. Look at the top selling box office smashes of all time, and there's a clear favorite. Go get into publishing, and they're like, every editor just wants like another award-winning book that no one will actually read. And it's like, what are we doing here? So when we start talking about stuff like that, like I geek out, and I love those questions. Maybe it's a little of my I don't like being the center of attention. So if we can start talking about a shared interest and something broader and more philosophical, I nerd out about that. Or talking about sailing, which has been a bigger part of my life than my writing career. That's always fun.
I had a conversation with my daughter, Stephanie, today, who, again, big fan, loves this. And she had this question she wanted me to pose to you, which is, do you feel sci-fi influences science, or is it vice versa, that science influences sci-fi?
There's definitely a symbiotic relationship there, but I don't think it's balanced. I think sci-fi writers are much more influenced by science. Very little actual science has come out of science fiction. Like people love Arthur C. Clarke's geostationary satellites, and there's like a couple things like that.
Well, that's technology came out of science
technology,
fiction, not science. It's a difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. So most science fiction writers are science nerds to some degree, or technology nerds, or like, just it's a fascination for them. So they're heavily, I would say almost every sci-fi writer is heavily influenced by science. Okay. I would say very, very little science is influenced by science fiction. However, almost all scientists are influenced by sci-fi. And that's just something I know from now. I get to I get invited to crazy things because I happen to write sci-fi instead of literature. Like I got to put on a clean suit and stand in front of the James Webb Space Telescope with the mirrors unfolded, like in the clean room.
Wow.
And I think the head of security got in trouble for like, instead of literature, like I got to put on a clean suit and stand in front of the James Webb Space Telescope with the mirrors unfolded, like in the clean room.
Wow.
And I think the head of security got in trouble for like getting me in there. But like I've been inside the fusion reactor, the only nuclear fusion reactor in the U.S. in California. I've been to rocket launches and been through the server farms that crunch that do the nuclear simulation testing. Like these are just like nerdy, crazy science, cool stuff. And the only reason I'm there is because I write in the sci-fi genre.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend, like, if you want to give talks at libraries, write literature. If you want to like go see people blow stuff up, write sci-fi.
Well, I think that, you know what? It shows that the science world respects what you write and includes you in their world, because what you write is so interesting and it's so exciting that you're a lucky dog. Let's say that, okay?
Oh man, the luckiest. The luckiest.
Where's your, since you said I'm just going to go there, where's your favorite place to sail?
Fiji is really high up the list. There's a really remote island in the southeast corner of the Fijian Islands called Fulanga. That is one of the most remote places you can go to. I spent 5 weeks there without seeing like anything other than like an islander. And the people there have very little contact with the outside world. They get like one supply ship a year if they're lucky. They were there's a cave there full of human remains, and the people of the villages were like, oh yeah, we were still eating people 40, 50 years ago, which I know anthropologists dispute, but the people there were swearing by. And the chief was in his 90s at the time, and he was pretty clear that he missed those days. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Did you go? Indeed. Well, I gotta go. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
No, they love joking about it too. They were like, I was like, wait, when was the last time you ate someone? And they were like, last Tuesday. And I was like, what? And then they'd be like, what are you doing next Tuesday? And I was like, oh my God, that is some dark humor. But I've never been around people that laugh more than those, and spend more time with their family. Just like really, they've got more figured out about what life is supposed to be like than we have even glimpsed. Yeah. Like we have lost sight of the important things because there's so many shiny distractions.
Yeah, my family and I did 5 weeks out west in a camper, seeing national parks. And that was just an amazing time to unplug more than we have in a long time and just be with our kids and create memories and see these amazing parks, and see the wonder on our kids' faces. It really, oh man, it just was so rejuvenating and life-giving. Wish more people could have opportunities like that, like you with your with sailing, to get to places like that.
I'm so glad you had that trip, man. That's a lifelong memory for everyone. I remember my parents taking us to national parks as little kids, and those like that created, so many branches of my life came from that moment.
What's the furthest you've ever sailed? Nautical miles.
In one shot, 3,200 nautical miles from the Galapagos to French Polynesia. But my wife and I just brought the boat that I'm sitting on right now. We started in France in July, and crossing the Atlantic is like 2,800 nautical miles. So it took us about 15 days.
Wow.
Sweet.
You're a brave man.
That's
oh man, I think it takes courage to not follow your heart. Like those are really brave people who can feel a pull driving them to something and be courageous enough not to do it. Like, I don't know how anybody pulls that off.
Talk
So
to the, go ahead, Adina.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, because we're getting close to the end of our time today. So, Hugh, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any other books of yours that our listeners should check out, or just wait for the next season of Silo?
Yeah, the next season of Silo is going to be is mind blowing. We got a great cast and new people coming in. Can't wait the on screen chemistry is through the roof. So I've seen that season 3 is incredible. Season 4 is filming now. We're going to wrap it up pretty soon. So hopefully the wait between 3 and 4 is not that great. And I'm just excited to tell this whole story. But yeah, I'm appreciative of the readers who made all this possible, and you guys for having me on. We're all just I'll tell you something. I'll leave you with. I just heard this today as we were discussing another story we're working on for adaptation, and one of the co-writers on the show was like, "Yeah, I think what this story is about is about the power of love triumphing over the love of power." And I was like, maybe other people have said that, but I was like, wow, the power of love over the love of power. And I think if we look around the world right now and hearing about, your national park trip and let's just keep that focus. Like the love is like the most interesting thing that we know about. And it's why we spend most of our lives thinking more on that than anything else. And I don't know, keeping that focus, whether it's your love of reading, love of story, love of each other, that should be our guiding light.
And
I love that.
Thank you for putting your email address and your I'm interviewing myself portion at the end of Silo. It has allowed this to happen. So thank you so much. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And, that was such a nice ending that I'm going to skip most of what I was going to say and just, kind of end with, whether readers came to your work through the books, the screen, word of mouth. I mean, I think your stories really have become part of our modern science fiction conversation in a very real and lasting way. And unfortunately, we only had time to touch on teeny bits of it. We could have sat here and talked for hours and gotten really into the meat of the material, but we do appreciate you taking, any time, this time to talk with us, and we are excited to see where your storytelling goes next. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the BIG Sci Fi Podcast. We're a proud part of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, and you can listen to more of our over 150 episodes at trekgeeks.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel now. Until next time, live long and prosper.